Deep night. In the middle of the North Atlantic, a ship as long as a street sails on. A great wave slowly rocks it and heels it over. 20 degrees, 30, and the hull tilts so far that the deck becomes a steep slope. Behind the bulkhead, the wind roars, water crashes down with a din, and the whole hull trembles from the impact. Just a few meters from the raging sea, in a dark, cramped cabin lies a man. He isn't holding the handrails, he's asleep. His body presses into the bunk, arms and legs spread to the sides, and with each new heel he only sways a little without opening his eyes. Everything around is secured. The chair bolted to the deck, the dishes stowed away. In a couple of hours, this man will get up and steer the ship through the storm. Looking at him, you wonder, how is this possible? We think of the sailor in a storm as a hero, but he can't be like this. He can't be at the helm with burning eyes. But it's all far more surprising. While some hold the ship, others must sleep. Sleep amid the din, the rolling, the heeling that would have thrown you out of an ordinary bed at home onto the floor. And how well they manage to rest tonight will largely determine whether they bring the ship into port. How does the human body fall asleep when the floor moves beneath its feet? Why does a ship, almost capsized by a wave, right itself again, and the sailor trusts it so much that he calmly closes his eyes? What does a man feel in the darkness of the cabin with the water pounding overhead? And when does the heel become a real threat? Today we'll live through a storm night with a sailor, from the first blow of the wave to the gray dawn, and understand how people learn to sleep where sleep seems impossible. Before we set out to sea, if you're interested in survival stories, in how they manage where nature itself is against them, subscribe to the channel right now so you don't miss the next dive. And now, let's come aboard. The storm is already close. It all begins long before the real wave arrives. Our hero, a watch sailor on a cargo ship, is in the middle of the ocean. He's finished his shift and now has a few hours to sleep before starting again. The forecast indicates strong wind during the night, and the experienced crew knows what that means. This is storm preparation, calm, almost routine work, and in that routine lies all the tension. People move quietly about the ship and secure every object that could shift. In the galley, the pots are stowed in their recesses, the plates are fixed on shelves with rims, and the stove has rails, metal frames that keep utensils in place even in a strong heel. In the cabins, everything on tables and shelves goes into drawers and chests. Cabinet doors are latched shut, chairs on ships are bolted to the deck, and those that aren't are laid down or tied. Why is this so important? Because in a storm, any loose object becomes a projectile. When the ship heels sharply, a heavy suitcase sliding off a shelf flies across the cabin and can break an arm, and the sailor about to sleep must be certain that nothing will fall on him in the dark. He checks his bunk. He raises the boards and the chests. The board is a narrow plank or fabric stretched taut along the edge of the bed. In the Navy, they call it a bunk board, and its only task is to keep the sleeper from falling to the floor. He has dinner while dinner can still be had normally. In an hour or two, holding a full cup will be an art. And here it's important to understand something a person from land doesn't feel. The sailor goes to sleep not when he's tired, but when there's a window. The watch schedule is strict. If you're set to sleep from 8 in the evening to midnight, you must use those 4 hours no matter what the sea is like. If you don't sleep now, you'll come to your watch exhausted, and an exhausted person at the helm in a storm is dangerous. He climbs into the bunk fully dressed. No one would undress completely on a night like this. If the alarm sounds, there'll be only seconds to get ready. And so, when the ship is barely rocking and the first big waves are only testing the hull's resistance, he closes his eyes. But the real night hasn't begun yet. The wind on board is only gathering strength, and in an hour, everything will change. Sailors say the storm is always fiercer at night, and there's some truth to it. The first truly strong heel comes near midnight. A great wave catches the ship, lifts it, and then slowly tilts the hull to the side. The bunk with the person tilts so far that, if not for the board, he'd already be sliding toward the edge. And here arises the key question. How does the body fall asleep in such conditions? The secret lies in how we keep our balance. Inside the ear is the vestibular apparatus, a tiny system of fluid-filled canals that tells the brain where up is, where down is, and which way the body is tilting. On land it works unnoticed, but at sea the mismatch begins. The fluid in the ear says one thing, the eyes in the dark cabin another, and the body feels a third. The brain receives contradictory signals and panics, what we call seasickness, nausea, dizziness, cold sweat. That's how the body reacts to sensory conflict. A novice doesn't sleep at all the first storm night. He gets seasick, he's tossed about in the bunk, and he meets each heel by tensing every muscle. But something astonishing happens. In 2 or 3 days at sea, the vestibular apparatus adapts. The brain stops perceiving the rolling as a threat and begins to ignore it. Sailors call it getting your sea legs. The body literally re-educates itself, and what caused terror yesterday becomes today a background against which one can fall asleep. But getting used to it is only half the lesson. The other half is done by posture. An experienced sailor doesn't fight the rolling, he surrenders to it. He lies down not along the side, but head toward the bow or stern if possible, so the rolling rocks him rather than tumbling him from side to side. He spreads his arms and legs and braces them against the walls of the bunk, wedging himself in like a strut. In this position, the body doesn't move. It's fixed at 3 points, and with each tilt of the ship, the person sways gently. That's why bunks on a ship don't run crosswise, but lengthwise. The bunks are narrow. In a wide bed, the sleeper would be thrown from one side to the other, whereas a narrow one holds him like a nest. There's another trick every experienced crew knows. The rolling isn't the same everywhere. The movement is strongest at the bow and stern, where the amplitude is greater, and nearer the center of the ship toward its middle, where the axis of roll passes, the amplitude of movement is minimal. That's why the most experienced try to take bunks in the central part, where the ship heels but hardly shakes. And yet, there's a problem that isn't solved by either habit or posture. Even a person who sleeps deeply on a storm night wakes again and again from the especially strong blows of the waves. That sleep is torn to pieces and doesn't fully restore one's strength. And what happens to a person who, day after day, isn't allowed to sleep? And why is it a matter of life and death for the crew? There's a danger that doesn't roar over the side or pound the hull. It accumulates in silence, and that's why it's so insidious. Imagine several days in a row, when every night you're woken dozens of times. You don't remember those awakenings, but the brain registers them, and the deep phases of sleep during which the body truly rests are destroyed. The person gets out of the bunk seemingly rested, but with a heavy head and slow reactions. And this person goes on watch and takes responsibility for a ship worth hundreds of millions and for the lives of everyone aboard. A tired brain deceives itself. An exhausted person believes he's fully in control of the situation, even though his attention is already failing. He can look at the radar screen and not see the signal of an approaching ship. He can misjudge the distance to a danger. He can disconnect from reality for seconds without noticing it. And in a storm, when every minute, sometimes every second, counts, such a mistake becomes fatal. That's why sleeping at sea is not a luxury or a weakness. For the safety of the ship, it's as important as a sound engine or a strong hull. International norms recognize this. There's a convention that regulates the work and rest of seafarers and requires that every crew member have a minimum number of hours of rest per day. Watches are organized so the person can sleep, even if there's a lot of work, a great deal. But here, between the letter of the law and the reality of the sea, lies an abyss. The rules are written for the storm, but the storm doesn't read the rules. When a ship meets bad weather, an emergency can rouse everyone, and the planned rest goes to ruin. The crew is caught in a trap. The law commands rest, but nature commands work. And then people sleep in turns, in snatches, squeezing themselves into the bunk so the brain can reboot. Our hero sleeps like this, intermittently, half awake, ready to leap up at the first warning, and entrusts his defenseless body to 2 things. The first is his fellow watchmen, who don't sleep and hold the ship. And the second is far more surprising. He trusts physics, that very force that lifts the ship each time a wave knocks it on its side. But how does the sailor know the ship will right itself? And what if one day it doesn't? It frightens anyone who finds himself in a storm for the first time. The ship heels more and more, the deck sinks underfoot, and it seems that a little more and it'll lie down in the water never to rise again. And then a miracle occurs. The hull halts for a second and slowly, heavily returns to vertical. And so, again and again all night. There's no miracle here. There's a precise engineering calculation made long before the ship set sail. This property is called stability. It's easiest to explain with the example of a roly-poly toy. Remember the tumbler doll that, however you knock it over, always returns to the upright position. Down inside it has a weight. Wherever you tilt it, that weight returns to the lowest point and pulls the whole toy back. The ship works on the same principle. In the lower part of the hull, under the water, are heavy ballast and cargo, and the ship's center of gravity is low. When a wave heels the ship, the weight of its displaced hull creates a force that rights it to vertical. Up to a certain angle, a rule works. The deeper the heel, the more strongly the ship is pulled back. The sailor feels this physics even while sleeping. An experienced person understands unerringly from the rolling. The ship heels a lot, but returns. That means everything's fine. You can sleep. The ship breathes beneath him like a living being, and that steady breathing lulls him. The heel is no enemy here. The heel is work, a moment of normal work, proof that the ship is alive and fighting. But this marvelous force has a limit, and here appears the true shadow of the threat. The righting force grows with the heel up to a certain angle, and beyond that it begins to weaken. If the ship tilts too far, it might not right itself. All this holds because the center of gravity stays low, and if it rises, if the cargo in the hold is poorly secured and shifts to one side during a strong heel, the ship will tilt and no longer be able to return to vertical. There's a second treacherous feature known to those who sail cold seas. In freezing weather, spray and waves falling on the deck and superstructure freeze. The ice builds up layer by layer, adding tons of weight high above the water. The center of gravity rises, stability falls, and the ship, like a tumbler doll, loses its ability to right itself. That's why the crew goes out and chips the ice without rest, fighting to keep the ship alive. And then comes the moment every sailor fears, a heel that stops being normal. The ship lies down on its side and takes longer than usual to return. In that instant, the one who sleeps opens his eyes. The body senses that the ship's breath has broken, and then in the deepest hour of the night, around 3, when the wind had been howling for hours and the sea churned to its limit, comes that very wave the sailors remember for years, bigger than the ones before. Our hero sleeps half awake, and suddenly the ship heels as deep as it hadn't all night. The bunk tilts abruptly, pressing him against the board, and from somewhere deep in the hull comes an unfamiliar heavy hum. He wakes instantly, before he can think. It's instinct developed over years. Any change in the ship pulls him from sleep better than any alarm clock. He stays a few seconds in the dark and listens. Not with his ears, with his whole body. The ship has stopped in a heel beyond the normal. 1 second, 2, and then the hull, heavily, reluctantly, begins to return to vertical. Its breathing has recovered. The righting force acted, the ship straightens, and by the sound of the engine it's clear the machine is running well and the helmsman is holding the bow against the wave. The safest course is the one where the ship cuts the wave without exposing its side. He thinks of the worst scenario spoken of in the fleet, of a lone, gigantic wave that can come suddenly, even where it isn't expected, and fall on the ship like a wall of water. Such waves exist, they're real, and the best defense against them is to meet them bow on, like any large wave. He knows the watch is doing exactly that right now, holding the course, watching the sea, ready to react, and that thought calms him. He doesn't get up. And it's important to understand this. The landman's instinct is to jump up, run, do something. But the experienced sailor knows that if there's no alarm, the best thing he can do is stay in the bunk and conserve his strength. In a few hours his watch comes, and up there he'll need a clear mind and quick hands. Panic and agitation will only burn the energy he'll soon need for work. So he wedges himself back into the bunk, braces his feet against the wall, and forces himself to breathe calmly. And little by little, under the heavy rhythm of the rolling, under the roar of the machine behind the bulkhead, he falls again into that astonishing, fragmented sleep only sailors know. The ship keeps fighting the sea, and the man inside entrusts his life to it and sleeps. Several hours of darkness still remain, and he doesn't know that the worst has already passed. The wind begins to ease at dawn, around 5. The waves smooth out, the rolling is gentler, the intervals between blows are longer, the ship still sways, but this is the ebb of the night's fury. And here's something happens that anyone who has never lived through a storm doesn't suspect. The tension that kept the body alert all night hasn't vanished. It was only waiting for its moment. While the ship was fighting, the sailor felt no fatigue. Adrenaline and instinct kept him active, even asleep. But the moment the sea calms, all the fatigue accumulated over the night comes crashing down at once. It fills the body, and the mind grows heavy as lead. True exhaustion comes not at the height of the storm, but afterward, when it's all over. Our hero opens his eyes to a gray light seeping into the cabin. The ship is alive. He is alive. The hull is still swaying, but it's a familiar, calm motion. He stays a few minutes, relaxing his stiffened muscles. Soon his relief comes, and he'll get up, dress. He'll drink a scalding tea, go up to replace those who held the ship while he slept. And then, when it's his turn to rest, it will repeat. We spent a storm night with him. We know the answer we began with. The sailor sleeps in the storm, not because he's fearless or unfeeling. He sleeps because his body has grown used to the rolling, because the bunk holds him like a nest, because his comrades on watch keep vigil nearby, and because beneath him works the physics that lifts the ship, again and again, back to vertical. Sleeping at sea is not the absence of fear, but acquired trust. Trust in people, in iron, and in the precise calculation made long ago on land. And the next time you fall asleep in a warm, motionless bed, remember this. Right now, somewhere in the middle of the ocean, in the raging darkness, thousands of people lie in narrow cabins, pressed against their bunks. Their ships heel, water roars over their heads, and they sleep, so that tomorrow they can once again carry the cargo to port and return home to those who wait for them. Human endurance and the ability to adapt to what seems unbearable remain the main force on which the sea rests. No technology has replaced this force. If you enjoyed this, hit like and subscribe to the channel. There are still many stories of people who live where an ordinary person wouldn't survive. What methods do you know for weathering a storm? Comment below.